Well, I want to thank the Institute for Resource. What I'm going to do is, try to do this in 35 minutes. I've prepared a script here. I won't read from it because that's totally nerdly. But because there's so much detail and I tend to get lost otherwise, I'll use these as reference. So try to, make this sort of eye contact thing, right? Okay. Anyway, so I want to thank the Institute for Resources, Environment, and Sustainability, especially Jean Marcus and Professor Oberg and Wani Lung, who's now left the room, right? For arranging this talk, as well as thank you all for coming to it. I know the pizza had some rolled in it, but of course, Anyway, so what is this talk about? Talk centers on Japan's Toyama City and Japanese resilience. I'll argue that Japanese policies for building resilience have the potential to make a globally significant breakthrough in deploying smart communities. Does anybody not know what smart communities are? I mean, you're in a smart community university. The smart communities, I'm sorry? Yeah, it's a very, plastic sort of definition, but it generally, at least as it's used in Japan, incorporates massive amounts of distributed renewable energy generation, smart grids, and other kinds of technologies focused on energy. I mean, you've got add-on things like smart transport and so forth, but basically your energy supply is smart. So, Japan has the potential for building resilience and the potential to make a globally significant breakthrough in deploying smart communities. This is due to incentives and agency. I believe Japan has nearly unparalleled incentives to act and is building a local government, public sector-centered paradigm potentially capable of taking leadership where the central state, private capital, and civil society have failed. This is in the wake of 311. This is what I'm arguing, that this productive public sector role. I know that's heresy for many, but okay. This is what Japanese nationalists are doing. They're not left-wingers. They don't have conventional energy resources that allows them to pretend that they can continue on as before. So this may seem exaggerated, but I'll let the evidence speak for itself, or rather I will speak for the evidence, whatever metaphor it applies. Anyway, I'll not focus only on Toyama. Rather, I'll show that Toyama is part of a much larger fiscal administrative initiative, one increasingly driven by sheer desperation. That's what Abenomics is, especially local Abenomics, which is its incarnation since about the fall of last year. I mean, you're talking about an unprecedented economic program, which if it fails, means that the country itself fails. So understand their desperation, understand their structure of incentives. Very different from here. So the sort of common sense that reigns here does not apply over there. It is too soon to say whether Japan's resilience initiative will be successful, so this talk outlines the details and their background. The evidence suggests that in the wake of several tumultuous years after 311, March 11th, 2011, the natural and nuclear disasters in Fukushima, but throughout the Tohoku area, and you could say the national political economy as a whole. That in the wake of several tumultuous years after 311, Japan's technocratic energy elites have gained traction by profoundly shifting their goals from what they were before 311. Back then, they were satisfied with or had acquiesced to incremental advances in a paradigm dominated by very powerful power monopolies, parasites of unparalleled size. They controlled the entire regional economies in regional power monopolies. They are now weak, and they are being weakened by these people who are acting It's a much larger story, and if we had more time, we could go into the details. But this is anyway. They had to work within that structure of vested interests, and now they don't. They had to work within a structure of centralized power generation and transmission and passive local communities, and the local communities are no longer so passive. Now they are explicitly, these energy technocrats are explicitly using the shock of 311 to deconstruct the monopoly power sector along the barrier to Japan's diffusion of smart and resilient distributed energy. They want to achieve far more than the constrained smart city or smart community projects that Japan was building prior to 311. And Toyama is a major part of that. That's why I'm using the case study of Toyama. The technocrats are also using the German model of local public sector corporations, or Stadtwerk, and the evolving global debate on resilience to fashion a domestic growth model. And they are explicitly, they are expanding the role of local government public corporations to achieve it. I'm going to say that numerous times. Local public sector corporations, local public corporations. These are key to this new paradigm that they're developing. This initiative is increasingly central, as I said, to Abenomics, especially the local Abenomics that has become the focus of revitalizing Japan's dying regions, and they are dying. Without productive action, Japan's local government's number is 1,718. Without productive action, about 800 of them will go extinct over the next few decades. They cannot continue as they were prior to 311 or immediately in the wake of 311, okay? So that is why you're seeing this activism. The activist policymakers, or policy entrepreneurs, if you will, because their population is declining and their financial circumstances are becoming increasingly constrained. That's why you have the Bank of Japan buying all of the government debt. Let me address those in the course of this, if you will. Thank you. The activist policymakers or policy entrepreneurs are also trying to implement this shift as soon as possible. As soon as possible. This isn't something where you make an agenda and implement it over, leisurely over the course of time. No, they're doing this as soon as possible. They have to decide the energy mix by this June. The liberalization of the retail power market is next year. They have to host the 2020 Olympics. And they have taken those and other realities, things that are staring you in the future. It's like if you're a student, it's like you've got an exam or a paper you have to turn in. Your behavior changes considerably. Mine did yesterday. I've got to do this today, right? Come on, man, get serious. Take out the stuff that's irrelevant. Anyway, so that's what they're doing. One thing I do have to explain is centralized versus distributed power. Centralized power is where you group your power generation in very large facilities versus distributed in smaller scale solar, biomass, biogas, etc. facilities that are far more efficient, resilient, etc., and increasingly more cost effective than these ones. And these ones are they characterize Japan's power economy. At present, less than 10% of Japan's total power generation the capacity is roughly 270 gigawatts. About less than 10% of it is distributed. Whereas in Germany, just under half, 48% of Germany's energy generation infrastructure was distributed according to Ernst & Young as of 2013. Distributed energy, as I said, is more efficient, resilient, socioeconomically equitable. It doesn't concentrate the infrastructure and therefore the returns. And it is also the direction in which most of global power systems appear to be headed. Japan cannot ignore this shift from centralized to distributed energy, even if its vested interests, its vested energy interests, especially the utilities, are desperate to. You see this tension. Currently, it is a very, in terms of power, it's a very centralized system. And so you've got these activist policy entrepreneurs quite deliberately trying to disrupt this. They're not, radicals in the lefty sense of the term. They're nationalists, but they're doing what makes sense in terms of economic opportunity in a very broad sense. Why are they doing this? Well, Japan's business model, so to speak, is importing raw materials. It's an island, it's an archipelago with very, very scant endowments of conventional energy and other resources. So its business model, which is very different from Canada's, which Canada is a country which has ample raw materials, some of it fantasized, but of course it has far more than Japan. Japan's business model is importing raw materials, working them up into manufacturers. It's a manufacturing-dominated political economy, and then selling those manufacturers overseas to cover the import costs, a modicum of social overhead, meaning education, etc., social security, and then social infrastructure investments, which, like maintaining your roads, your waterworks, etc. Okay, so it's got to make a little bit on its, on its business, and that hasn't been happening. As you can see here, this is a Japanese slide, but I put it over here. Here's the details. In 2006, their GDP was just a smidgen over 500 trillion yen, which is, I don't know how many times Japan's economy, or rather Canada's economy. I think in Canadian, the exchange rate is what? It's roughly about 100. So 5 trillion yen, or $5 trillion Canadian dollar, roughly 5 trillion Canadian dollar economy. I forget what the GDP of Canada, I think, is 2 trillion Canadian dollars. So you can see how big these numbers are, and how meaningful they are. They slipped into a deficit in 2014. Now, this is marginally picked up in the latest trading data, import-export balance data, because, of course, the falling price of energy costs, oil, gas, etc. However long that continues is uncertain. But they have what appears to be a structural deficit on their trade and so on. The Japanese authorities take these signs of a potential structural trade deficit quite seriously. The point most relevant here is that Japan cannot afford to produce another Galapagos of manufacturers. Galapagos is a term often used with respect to Japan to describe, for example, Japanese smartphones that are used only on the archipelago, only in Japan, and don't have a significant share of international markets. Galapagos, that's what it's called, it's Galapagos. And so there's a history of Galapagos stuff, especially in the wake of the collapse of the Japanese bubble in 1989, 1990, 1991. The country has actually never fully recovered since then, and it has had a number of failures of Galapagos products, which is why Sharp and those other huge makers, Sony, etc., are really standing on the Wile E. Coyote cliff of bankruptcy. So for that country to build power systems and get back to distributed versus centralized power, for it to continue in the course at present and keep with a centralized power paradigm when the rest of the world is shifting, right, to this distributed energy power would be unwise, to say the least. So, why examine Toyama? You know, why have I chosen this? It highlights certain things, so I've chosen this. Now, here's where Toyama is. This is Toyama Prefecture. It's a population of a little over 1 million, with quite a level of aging. I think the Japanese national level of aging is about 26%, so it's somewhat higher. And here's Toyama City. The one, this talk is Toyama and resilience. And so Toyama City is the focus. And Toyama City's population is roughly 420,000. It's not increasing, it's decreasing, with 26.8% being over 65. Excuse me. The city is not only aging, but energy intensive. Toyama Prefecture itself, this one I just showed you, this prefecture, number of, has Japan's second highest rate of car ownership. Prefectures are like Canadian provinces. It's just there are more of them in Japan, about 48. Actually, there are 48. And so the Toyama Prefecture has Japan's second highest rate of car ownership if you compare the prefectures at 1.73 vehicles per capita, compared to 2.6 vehicles per capita in the U.S. and 1.7 in Canada. I mean, a very energy-intensive kind of lifestyle. Look at the size of the roads. Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise you here, of course, because we've got wide roads here, but that's pretty car dependent. Urban model. The reliance on motor vehicles for commutes overall is written here is 72.2%, and commutes to work is 83.3%. Wow. You don't want to be, home ownership is 80%, you know, so you're not clustered downtown in condominiums. This is home ownership, right? It has the worst sprawl, therefore, among Japanese mid-sized cities. Toyama City has the worst sprawl. Over the past decade, this is leading to depletion of the downtown core. Over the past decade, there's been an 11.5% decline in the downtown area population from just over 27,000 to just a smidgen over 24,000 that I've written here. Retail sales dropped even worse, 40%, from 197.3 billion yen to 118.2 billion yen. This has got to do something fast, something smart. It's hard to call this a success, right? It's clearly a work in progress, but one that needs significant acceleration. However, in June of 2012, the OECD spotlit Toyama City, along with Vancouver, Melbourne, and Paris as exemplary cases of compact city development. At the same time, the OECD noted that governance problems impede better coherence among policy regimes and that administrative and their administrative and functional areas. Functional areas, the OECD speak for, like you got all these people commuting, right? So that's a functional area. People commuting from here to go downtown to their job or wherever, that's a functional area. And so you got to link functional areas and administrative areas. You got to have some entity, some public sector entity capable of planning for the entire area in order to coordinate your programs, to make them not overlap, or where you've got roads and subways not linking together, etc. You got to have good coordination of your functional and administrative areas. This is something the OECD always hammers home in its reports, and it is quite well taken. And increasingly with smart cities, probably we're going to have not just functional areas of transport, but power generation and transmission, et cetera, as part of that, because it's distributed. Now it becomes a local concern. So we're moving into a paradigm that's perhaps profoundly different from the one we are used to. Here we got to move fast. Okay. Here's Toyama City. It's an interesting case. It's an especially interesting case because it has multiple lines of policy in there. Compact City is one policy line. MLIT is the Ministry of, MILT, Ministry of Infrastructure, what is it? Ministry of Lands, Infrastructure and Transport. Sorry, the Japanese name is different from the one they use in English, and I always forget them. Ministry of Lands, Infrastructure and Transport, which is about bridges and roads, right? So they got a compact city policy paradigm at work inside Toyama City. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry has a smart community policy paradigm at work in there. You got renewable and distributed energy policy, there are multiple policy lines under the, within the, what do you call that? The administrative ambit of Ministry of the Environment, as well as the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forests, and other central government agencies. And they have their tracks in local governments. And so you got a whole bunch, and then you got these too, and this is like MLED and MEDI and other agencies, quasi-governmental agencies involved in this. All of these very promising initiatives, well funded. And within that, the city of Toyama is emphasizing revitalized public transport to focus urban functions on the downtown area as well as along urban transit lines. And we just saw this is their little, what do you call that, an LRT, right? They're putting this, they're hoping that to get all those people out of their cars and get into that public transit and come downtown and shop and so forth and build social capital, right? Make the downtown more walkable, et cetera, more interesting to visit. And so people will gravitate towards it and then start moving maybe more towards a compact city paradigm. That's the idea. And that would reduce your energy consumption because you wouldn't burn so much liquid fuel, right, to move your car all over. You would ride that. Let's go. And they've got all kinds of distributed generation, solar, biomass. You can see here the biomass facilities and so forth. And the interesting aspect of this, particularly relevant to talking about resilience, is you've got intergenerational and interregional aspects, because you're not just looking at the city, the downtown core. How can we make it green? How can we make it resilience in the face of climate change, energy insecurity, and so forth? No, how can we link the farming areas around the suburban areas and all that into a larger regenerative, resilient paradigm? So that's implicit in the model. The question is, do you have the governance capacity to realize that at the local level? Because like I said, you've got all these central agencies, and they're not bad people, but they have their own agendas. Anyway, Toyama City, again, is another reason Toyama City is important, is it was recognized by the Rockefeller 100 Resilience, the Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient Cities program, which has been in implementation since December of 2013. The aim is to help cities around the world become more resilient to the physical, social, and economic challenges that are a growing part of the 21st century, and particularly climate change, right? Which I know in North America, well, not so much here, clearly, but for example, the state of Florida, you know, they have an unwritten rule. You're not allowed to use the words sea level rise or climate change in your environmental departments. What? Come on, you know, you're threatened by, you know, I mean, Florida, you know, it's one of the more threatened areas of the United States. And so you've got this agency saying, look, we want to develop a paradigm of resilience. And the way they're doing it is they make their selections of resilient cities based on applications from the cities themselves. So they don't go around and say, okay, you're resilient. No, they get applications and they sort through them, look them over and see which ones have the most potential to be instructive cases and so forth. They have various criteria for deciding that. One major goal of the 100 Resilient Cities program is to foster an international cohort of chief resilience officers, each working in his or her designated city and funded by the foundation. So for example, Toyama was selected last December, so it'll get funding for a chief resilience officer. Ideally, these chief resilience officers are empowered to build resilience within their own urban and regional contexts. So the Toyama City Chief Resilience Officer will have to, it'll probably be a guy, he will have to, you know, sort out these various programs. Another resilient city goal is to maximize the resilience dividend, the returns you get from building resilience by deploying infrastructure and practices that pay off in greater resilience against disaster. You know, maybe there'll be a disaster tomorrow, but usually it's down the road a bit. So not just resilience against that disaster, but it's also resilience during your routine operations. There's a book on it. It's actually quite an interesting book. It was published last year. And if you don't want to read the book, if you don't have time, there's a very good talk at the LSE. The LSE has a podcast thing, LSE Talks, or whatever it's called. And there's one by Judith Rodin in I think it's January. And if you don't have time to buy, you know, or money or whatever, you know, then just get a freebie from the podcast, the LSE podcast. And she gives a very good summary of the book and what the resilience dividend is, and why they're doing what they're doing. Anyway, one example used in the book is flood-resistant infrastructure, resilient against natural disasters, that is also used to generate power and is a locus of tourism activities. So it has payoffs in terms of resilience, but also payoffs in terms of the here and now, the ordinary circumstances. I didn't phrase that very well, but I think you get what I mean. Anyway, so here's how they've, this is a very involved little thing here, but they've visualized what they mean by resilience dividends. Basically, investment that limits disaster and spurs new growth, as you see over here. So if you do a little Google for Rockefeller Foundation, you can access this. If you're interested in seeing exactly what is written within these little bubbles here, be my guest. It's very, very instructive. So what sort of resilience dividend is Toyama likely to realize, Toyama City? What might be its signal contribution to the resilience cities network? Well, I've already shown that Toyama isn't Japan's greenest city. It also isn't Japan's most resilient city, no matter how one defines resilience. It's not even the one most threatened by climate change. Actually, the Tokyo Yokohama metropolitan area is unprecedented in terms of its exposure to typhoons, hurricanes, or cyclones, or whatever you want to call them, and other natural disasters, far greater than Toyama. Anyway, so it's not a particular standout case, but in those respects. But Toyama has perhaps the greatest density of smart and compact city and other related public policies, as I showed. It's got a whole bunch of them. Among Japan's cities, it's especially aimed at coping with the intersection of aging and resource crises to build resilience intergenerationally and throughout its city region, not just the downtown, but the entire region, encompassing the rural areas, as well as to maximize economic opportunities through doing that, and economic opportunities broadly, not like for, oh, rich investors, let's give them everything. No, a more equitable program. The Toyama case is an exemplar of what is possible in Japan. There are multiple well-funded central agencies keen to deploy compact city, smart community, future city, distributed energy, and other policies and finance for dealing with Toyama City, as well as the country's long list of demographic, dirty energy dependence, climate change, and other chronic and increasingly threatening problems. So you've got all kinds of agencies, money, programs. What has been lacking, however, is the capacity and incentives for local governments, such as Toyama City, to take the leadership role in designing and implementing these policies, designing them locally, making them maximize the local benefits. Japan is a unitary state, not a federal state like Canada, with powerful central agencies that have their respective bureaus in local governments. They have reflections of themselves in the local governments. So you have the central government's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, and you've got the METI Bureau in each local government, right? And the same with all the others, the MLET, et cetera. Fiscal transfers between the central government and the local governments, I said there were just over 1,700. Total about 30 trillion yen. That's well over 3 trillion Canadian dollars. Or about 1.5 times greater than the entire Canadian economy, whose GDP was, as I said, was about 2 trillion in 2014, 2 trillion Canadian dollars. Most of the money that's transferred between Japan's national and local governments is devoted to social services, and increasingly, right, the aging society, more and more in pensions and healthcare and etc. Most of it's devoted to social services rather than the stereotype of spending on roads and bridges. Japan is generally seen as the exemplar, as the basket case of public works, pork barrel public works. It is important to maximize the effectiveness of these funds flowing into climate and energy-related projects in Japan. So you got a massive amount. It's important to maximize their effectiveness. Because policies for dealing with energy, climate, aging, and other broad challenges cross so many administrative areas, and they're interlinked, there's a risk of overlap as well as poor design due to preferences of the central agencies, the particular central agencies, and their allied political and business coalitions. These preferences do not necessarily coincide with the best interests of the local community. You can understand that, right? And so it's unclear whether a Rockefeller-funded chief resilience officer in Toyama can gain a lot of traction in among those multiple central agencies and their massive flow of funds. Japan is, now a highly geared economy in terms of, you're pumping in this finance in Abenomics, local Abenomics, all these programs. Do they do you maximize their effectiveness? If you don't, you forfeit, not only forfeit enormous opportunity in international markets, potential opportunity, but you also risk, a collapse of a very precarious kind of growth engine you've put in place over the last 2 years of Abenomics. This may be, the last chance for it. That's the world's third largest economy, right? So appreciate the importance, right now. It's not like, oh, we can do this for several years and get away with it. And probably not. And those people, the people who are taking productive action are trying hard to take productive action, appear to be well aware of that. Anyway, there is a Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities chief resilience officer. Is he or she going to be able to deal with all that? Probably not. However, they got some serious backup here. Not this sports guy. This is a sports guy for the Resilience Japan campaign. There's a powerful initiative at the Japanese central government level, strongly supported by the cabinet, to make the rollout of distributed energy and smart communities, the spearhead for expanding local government's capacity to lead. So there is awareness at the highest level that we have to concentrate agency in the local governments. The key agency under consideration is the local public corporation, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail in a minute. One policymaking body where this approach is being worked up is the Association for Resilience Japan. The agency was set up last July after considerable uncertainty about what the Liberal Democratic Party, that's the government, the one in power now, was going to do. Prior to the Liberal Democratic Party, let's call it the LDP, wresting control of government from the hapless Democratic Party of Japan, which was in power in 311 and made a total mess of it. In the December, the LDP won government on December 14th, 2012, the national election. Prior to that, the LDP had brought out this proposal for a 200 trillion yen 10-year plan for building resilience. Oh man, at that time, that came from the LDP's Ministry of Lands, Infrastructure and Transport pork barrel crowd. Let's build bridges and roads and seawalls. Come on, man. Let's pour a lot of concrete, right? Came from them. So it was, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. These people are going to, parasitize the political economy. They're going to ride the horse until it dies. Basically, that's what it appeared to be. However, in the interim, fortunately, policy entrepreneurs and some really smart people in Japan, in the University of Tokyo, etc., who understand resilience. They're linked into international networks, etc. Resilience and its link to distributed energy, they understand this stuff. They work themselves to the top of this. They appear to have shifted the plan's focus to more potentially rewarding spending. So, one of these policy entrepreneurs is this fellow, Kashiwagi. His last name is Kashiwagi. You use, of course, last names in Japan. It's become a habit with me, and so that's why I write it this way. If you had it somewhere others, it would be Takao. His first name is Takao. One of these policy entrepreneurs is Kashiwagi Takao, long a heavyweight in Japanese energy and smart community planning. He is very adeptly collaborating with other policy entrepreneurs in the midst of great ferment in Japanese energy politics and policymaking, carving out a very, very broad-based reform, very encompassing reform, very credible reform. And among other things, the reform would greatly expand the role of Japan's local public corporations, in contrast to Germany, whose Stadtwerk, or local public corporations in energy, are the explicit model of what these people are doing. They're looking at Germany and saying, we want to do that, but we want to do it on steroids. Denmark and Germany are really standout cases where you've got local governments incentivized and empowered by local public corporations in the energy business. Japan's local public corporations have a minimal role at present in power and heat markets. That compares with, for example, Denmark's capital of Copenhagen, where the local public corporation Hofor, 73% owned by the city, supplies water, renewable power, gas, heat, district heating and cooling, which is what heat means, sewerage, etc., and also aims at zero carbon by 2025. And there's no, there's no mystery why they can do that. They have very effective governance through that paradigm. Pardon me. So anyway, here's Kashiwagi's list of stuff that hardly exhausts his roles. I mean, the guy is incredibly powerful he's an academic, but he's not a politician. He's never run an election, but he's very classic in Japanese political economy is these academic bureaucratic actors. And that's what he is. He crosses over both and is very powerful in both. Anyway, one of Kashiwagi's roles is chairing a research commission on local government-led community energy systems, what I've just been talking about, okay? In the Ministry for Internal Affairs and Communications. The commission has been meeting since November 7 of last year, working up a template for rolling out distributed energy systems with the local governments, local public corporations as the key agent. They're very explicit about this. Kashiwagi is collaborating closely with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications Minister, Takaichi Sane. Now, she's a very powerful nationalist on the right wing of the LDP, but she's a powerful contender to be the next prime minister. That's how much Japan is changing. You know, I mean, a woman could be a prime minister there. Anyway, with her she's taking the unusual step of participating directly in the commission. She's a very strong actor in that cabinet, and she's the minister of a pivotal agency, the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, because you are doing local Abenomics. This is maybe your last real opportunity to get traction in your goal for building sustainable growth. I mean, it's really precarious. They know that. So the MIC as a bureaucracy combines oversight, the MIC, I call it the MIC, okay? Combines oversight of Japan's 1,718 local governments, okay? That's its Ministry of Internal Affairs, so it oversight of those governments, especially their fiscal, their budgets, their fiscal affairs, as well as communications. It champions communications, especially the smart ICT economic growth strategy. So it combines local governments, the shepherding of local governments, as well as the ICT growth strategy, which is like smart growth strategy, right? This is perfect. You combine these functions in the same ministry. The MIC understands the role of smart grids, the potential for renewable energy, and the need for a much more innovative smart community model led by local government, rather than the model developed by the METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, and its organizations in their smart community projects. So you got this fissure at the top. That's what Kashiwagi used to be, a METI person. We used to work closely with METI, and now he's working closely with MEC. This is very disruptive and productively disruptive, perhaps. Anyway, the MIC Research Commission, this research commission, will have its final meeting this month and produce a template for local government-led and energy-centered smart communities. You can't see this. You know, what have we got here? But this is, you know, they're doing what I just described in Toyama. You know, how do you get the entire regional economy? So not just the downtown with some solar, but the suburban areas, the mountainous areas, how do you incorporate them into this? So these people are acting very quickly and very smart. Do you have an LI? Smartly? Whatever. Given the challenges that they face, given as well as the opportunities they face in a period of extreme uncertainty, you know, and the desperate need to get a sustainable growth paradigm underway, and the almost clear failure of the sort of, well, let's just throw a whole bunch of, you know, Bank of Japan finance into the economy and hope that, you know, the pushing on a string gets the thing going. Well, that doesn't appear to have worked. What's plan B? Well, this appears to be plan B. Okay? In back of that, the Association for Resilience Japan, this is even bigger. This is what I introduced, you know, the LDP in 2012. It looked like they were going to build a whole bunch of bridges and roads. Well, that's not on the agenda, but it's still very big. This was set up from the Resilience Japan. Sorry, they don't have a poster in English. But anyway, the Association for Resilience Japan was set up formally in July of last year, July 1 of last year. Has received very little attention in the Japanese press. You know, it's unreal, considering the enormity of the, you know, the money and et cetera that they're talking about. And they got this working groups. It's got 15 working groups. Okay, they were set up in the fall, and they are going to produce interim reports this month and next month. And they're working really fast. And for example, on Working Group 5, Building Resilient Smart Communities, chaired by him. Okay, he's chairing this one. He's chairing this one. He's chairing all kinds of things. Okay, he's a very central actor. The city of Koyama is part of one of the observer cities on the Association for Resilience Japan's number 5 working group on building resilient smart communities. The working group is, to repeat, chaired by Kashiwagi Takao. So he's linking all these things together. You've got people linking things as well as organizations linking things. And doing things to disrupt the encrusted, institutionalized practices hitherto. And they're not just like, you know, in a room by themselves. On the same, 10 minutes left? Thank you. On the same committee, on the same working group, you have a mix of energy, mobility, and smart community businesses. The former include Osaka Gas, Chiyoda Corporation's hydrogen chain promotion unit, et cetera, et cetera. The mobility and smart community businesses include Honda, Japan IBM, Toshiba, Nissan Motors, Mitsubishi Motors. These are big, big initiatives. They also have other things, and I was going to get into what they're doing, but leave that. If there's a question on that, I can answer that. Let's skip through this so that we have some time for questions. Actually, what time is it? 20 past? Well, I'm not, what? Oh, I've almost exhausted the time, right? Oh, that's terrible. Let's skip through here and get to the, let's just say they're powerfully incentivized. Here are other things that are happening. I'm making an argument to you that there is something really big going on in Japan in a very compressed period of time. And I've shown you several examples and several actors. That's not an exhaustive list. Here, you have the Covenant of Mayors Japan coming out and saying, look, this is January 30. They had a meeting January 30 with the mayor of Toyota City, meaning Toyota Motors Corporation, as a guest of honor, signing off on distributed energy 15% by 2020 and 45% by 2030. Okay, so understand what this means in institutional terms. You also have Japan's a new firm, Stadtwerk Japan, just, what is today, the 10th, right? Just last week, just a new firm, Stadtwerk Japan, wholly owned by West Holdings. West Holdings is Japan's biggest producer of solar. It has 131 mega solar projects, 3,938 industrial scale solar projects, and over 50,000 household solar projects. It is a huge entity. And it has set up a firm to provide advice to Japanese local governments on how to set up Stadtwerk style, meaning local public corporation, German style, local public corporation initiatives. So, I mean, I don't know if this is all going to turn out well. I can't say that. But I can tell you that you've got a hugeness here. And if I have probably 5 minutes, right? Eight? Yeah, I want to have, so I've basically outlined these, and I could tell you the theoretical argument I want to make, but let's not do that. There is a wave of doing these kinds of things, remunicipalizing, putting the incentives and the capacity back into the local government, happening even in the United States, remunicipalizing water systems. In Germany, since 2007, 170 German municipalities have remunicipalized their energy services. So this is not without precedent. What I'm suggesting is the Japanese may be primed to get to the head of that and deploy an enormous amount of distributed energy, and perhaps produce another miracle. Let me go out on a limb here and say, the Japan has been overlooked totally, might be in the midst of producing another miracle. Anyway, so let me finish there and apologize for exceeding the time that I promised I said I would, and leave a minute for questions. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. It's going to take like about a decade to, if this really is as significant as it appears to be, it's going to take a long time to go through the tracks of exactly why the Resilience Japan plan changed so dramatically. I mean, next week they have the UN-sponsored disaster resilience 4-day international conference up in Sendai, and several of the presentations there will be on this. In fact, Kashiwagi's initiative is the subject of one of the panels. So it's huge. And why it changed so profoundly in that direction remains to be seen. But as to why they've gone this disruptive against the power monopolies, which is really the key thing, right? why are they able to do this to the power monopolies? Well, they've always had a commitment to liberalizing the power markets. The question was whether that would be, a denatured kind of liberalization where the power monopolies, just have formed themselves into holding companies and still maintain their grip on the grid, right? Or whether it's actually liberalized and you get this distributed energy. This is the real threat. The diffusion of distributed energy is a profound threat to the extant utilities business model. Not to do that, not to open up the space for distributed energy means to lock your political economy into senescence. The Germans, December 1 of last year, the Germans' biggest utility, E.ON, abruptly, taking everybody by surprise, made itself into two companies. It said, it's not officially done yet, but we're going to make two companies. One is distributed energy, solar and others, and one is centralized energy, the nuclear, coal, etc. They took the regulators by surprise. But that reflected the tension within that company. It's like, you can smell the fight between the two sides, right? And that's in the larger political economy. So if you're Japanese and you've, wow, we don't want to go Galapagos again. To the extent that this is a real argument, that this is grounded in reality, you want to go in that direction. And this is something that Kashiwagi and those people understand. Kashiwagi is the father of Japan's smart community initiatives. I mean, that guy wants these to, succeed. And so, it seems to me, watching what they're doing, is that they have organized a cohort of people willing to, push for that. And if you get a cohort willing to act in a large political, look at America. They went to war as a result of, they went to a war that lost them, $3 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan as a result of those neocons. A small group, a cohort of people who were able to make their foreign policy, their foreign and military policy into one of history's greatest failures. So what can a small group of people do if they have, the incentives and the very clear goal and so forth? That may be what we're seeing happen. And so it suggests that the Abe regime, while okay, well, we want liberal, well, we want this too. They're deliberately finessing a lot of these things and allowing these actors to shape a profound agenda. And, some of this is, if you go back to this, I'm sorry to get at length of this, but it's an interesting thing. On this, it's like a Rorschach test, You've got all kinds of people cooperating in this Resilience Japan initiative, and I'll bet that a lot of these actors think it's, we're going to do methane hydrate, right? No, it's not. It's going to be distributed energy, right, et cetera. So a lot of that, because I read all of these, the people who are participating in this are not restricted to Kashiwagi and his cohort. There are others, right? All these businesses. And their understanding of what's going on is profoundly at odds in some cases with what these other people are doing. So evidently, some people haven't got the memo, if you sum it up. Anyway, that's a great question. So any others? Probably got, yeah. I promise not to talk so long. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah? Well, that's a good question. That's an excellent question, and it has so many variables impacting on it that it's, you really don't know, because it would depend on the capacity of those power monopolies who, for example, TEPCO, the world infamous TEPCO, significantly impaired in its capacity to control events. However, the other ones are still quite strong, right? And they still have their strong associations throughout the political economy and, in the media, and, or reflecting their common sense in the media and so forth. So how would that happen? It depends, because, part of what Kashiwagi and those people are doing is they're organizing the collaboration of local governments. So, because Japanese local governments, 1,718 local governments, they can't all do their distributed energy rollout by themselves. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the concentrations of human capital, right? The human resources. So this has to be coordinated. So without the resilience thing, without the signals from the MIC and its commission and so forth, I suspect that it certainly wouldn't happen as quickly as it should and potentially could, given this. We've seen since 311 a significant take-up of, for example, solar and other distributed generation, but it has been blocked by the utilities' ability to use their power positions granted by the policy regimes in place. I'm sorry to talk so policy wonky, but they're able to use their extant positions. And to break through that, you really need this kind of initiative, because over the past 4 years, in spite of Japan's, all of the nuclear reactors being shut down, right? Almost entirely over a 4-year period. Of course, there were a couple of restarts interim, but for the longest time, you've had 30% of your power generation capacity offline, and you haven't had a massive flow of renewables. So what they want to do, it seems to me, is to get the local governments to do it. Because the local governments are like properly incentivized and organized, are like a bulldozer, potentially. And so it's not just the Resilience Japan program, it's also these governance, the commission studying how to put in a local public corporation, how to broaden it into energy. What do you need to do? That kind of, trailblazing of, okay, here it is, and here's what you do, is essential in order to get momentum in a place like Japan where there's huge inertia. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for, yeah. Should always put a watch here. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, it